Hello, hello. Welcome to the UFC 327 recap. Getting it out early this time around, so people will stop hassling me and stop bugging me. No, I do actually want to get these done a lot earlier than I've been doing them lately. It's just that the work season is at its absolute peak for me right now because taxes are my thing. So for the next 2-3 weeks, things are busy. And then it'll die down. And we will return to our regularly scheduled program. Anyways, UFC 327 has come and gone. And on paper, this card promised a fair amount of action and delivered. Maybe a lackluster amount of actual analytical appeal. And I would largely agree with that because the fights that I really enjoyed, Josh Hokit and Curtis Blades, Cub Swanson, Nate Landwehr, Medeiros versus Padilla, Luque versus Gastelum. Not really terribly analytically thrilling or all that interesting, but there was something here. Paulo Costa and also Aaron Pico really showing off. And unfortunately, Dominic Reyes and Johnny Walker having an absolute dud of a fight that is not for the first time making me want to kind of see the back of them. But we probably will continue to get them fighting because 205 does not really have a pruning of talent. I mean, after all, Rafael Sequeira is still in the UFC somehow. So that I think tells you all you need to know about that. And I think Tukatokos is still around too. And he is not turning into anything. Sorry for any Tokos fans, but that is the case. But yeah, let's kick this off. Carlos Ulberg versus Yuri Procházka. This fight was just starting to simmer a little bit, just starting to get into a place where it was going to be fun, just getting into that hints of what was to come. And then Carlos Ulberg blows out his, knee. And I'm like, well, this is over because there's no way Ulberg is winning this on one leg. There's no way that your boy, Yuri Procházka, can be that dumb. Can there? And the answer is yes. Because he points down to the middle, tries to do the whole Max Holloway thing, gets hit with a 1-2 and then backs off. And I'm like, oh, that's disappointing for one. But for another, he's not really... He's attacking Ulberg's damaged leg, but then thinking, no, this is not the Bushido warrior way. This is not the code. This is not the option. And eventually just charges at Ulberg with his hands down and gets lit the F up and knocked out. And Carlos Ulberg is your champion in probably the worst way possible because I think I said this in the preview. Ulberg winning here was the better result for the UFC because he hadn't lost to Alex Pereira. There was that sort of at least fresh blood at the top, that intriguing idea that wasn't a trilogy fight if Pereira does go back to 205 instead of, well, if Procházka has the belt, it's obviously because Alex is not there. As much as I would pick Alex in a heartbeat to beat Ulberg, it hadn't happened yet. It was on the table that Ulberg maybe was actually the better option. But the way that he won this is no one but Yuri. Well, this is 205. Maybe I'm being a little too positive about the fight IQ of this division. But very few people other than Yuri Procházka would proceed to lose this fight with a compromised foe in front of them. This does feel a little bit like the Vitor Belfort win over Randy Couture back in the day, or the I don't want to diss Matt Serra's win over GSP, but the Matt Serra GSP win at welterweight would be another example of this. It doesn't feel real. It feels even less like a real championship that it was already going to feel regardless of the outcome. And then Joe Rogan violating once again his I don't want to interview people who have been knocked out thing by interviewing Yuri Procházka, who's like, it's like you showed mercy, and it's like you're just dumb. You're just dumb. We don't need to encourage Yuri's sort of fantastical view on the world at the best of times. Never mind right after when he just got knocked out. Ulberg strolls out with the belt. How long before we do an interim belt? And how long before Joe Rogan talks about again, because he's done this a number of times, about not wanting to interview knocked out fighters and then promptly doing it 2 events later. Let's get this out of the way because it applies to the co-main event. Donald Trump was here once again. I've said this repetitively. This is all I want from people. And I know I'm asking a lot of fight fans. All I want is to not play the game of Donald Trump is treated like every other politician. This is not a political thing. This is just Dana White saying thank you for Donald's support back in the early days of the UFC, because the time to do that would have been before he was running for president and stuff, before he became political. That would have been the time. So I just want that admission, because again, it's not like the UFC's politics have ever been good. This is a promotion that has largely been used for sports washing for a long time. I made peace with that long ago. I just don't appreciate the bullshit. Gets the whole entrance, everything. And the reason I'm covering it here is because Paulo Costa went and talked to him afterwards, which got gay alarmingly fast, and probably will result in Paulo Costa being at the White House at some point. But this Paulo Costa Azamat Mirzakhanov fight was fascinating in a good way and a bad way. In a good way, it was like, wow, Paulo Costa really looked good here. He looked good in the first round. That wasn't surprising. But after a rough second round, where he got thrown around, where he felt the strength and the power of Mirzakhanov a little bit, he came out in the third round and actually went out there and did good things. He's smashing like hard kicks to the body, hard kicks that probably at some point compromised the arm of Mirzakhanov, actually, and then finishes him off in the third round, because Paulo Costa in his career is not a guy who tends to come back from fights where things start going badly. He's been a mentally lackluster fighter in the sense that he can be broken. And it was part of why I refused to pick him here, because I was looking at his fights and like, yeah. There was a really good fight there against Roman Kopylov where he went out there and fought three rounds hard. But Kopylov at no point made him doubt himself. Never put that element of question in himself. And that was why, I wasn't really going to trust it. He'd lost to Sean Strickland and Robert Whittaker prior. Those are perfectly fine losses. But they were both examples of Costa having moments where he started to doubt himself and then it kind of went downhill. So, particularly the third round of that Whittaker fight. So I was worried. I was concerned. I'm like, this guy's beaten Luke Rockhold and Roman Kopylov in the last 5 years. 6 years, actually. So how much am I going to trust him? And he went out there and he performed really, really well. And the question, I guess, becomes like, is this him turning over a new leaf where mental fortitude is actually a thing he has? Because he's got all the physical tools and his technique is not bad. And his willingness to fight is not bad. Like he'll fight hard for 3 rounds as long as he's got faith in himself. He'll fight at a high pace. He'll fight a volume fight. Like I was talking about those losses even, and I mean, even in those losses, he landed, let's see here, let's get the UFC stats numbers here. He landed 99 strikes against Kopylov in the win, 158 strikes against Strickland, 67 against Whittaker. Now it's a 5-round fight against Strickland, to be clear. And even in the loss to Marvin Vettori, he landed 163. So like the cardio, the technique, the athletic ability, the even game plan, really, because like seldom have I been like his game plans are off. Like there's okay fight IQ there, or his coaches are like really actually solid at putting together a relatively basic idea for him to fight with. But this was the first time I think I've seen him regroup, because after the second round, I was pretty sure Mirzakhanov was going to win. He had taken him down twice and absolutely showed off his power and his strength. Just absolutely ragdolled Costa on 2 occasions there. Blew up one by going for a scarf hold. And I thought, like, this is it. This is it. This is when Costa starts to fall apart. And he didn't. He came back. He came back hard. And it's like, I'm a little interested now. We'll see where this goes. He talked about going back down to 185. I don't think it really matters. As long as he can make 185 without killing himself, like, it's fine. But he's not small at 205. There are guys who are going to be bigger than him, but it's not really that many, to be honest. I mean, Khalil Roundtree is a top guy in this division. And I'm pretty sure Acosta is actually bigger than him. Yuri Procházka is a top guy in this division, and he's taller than Costa, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's actually lighter. So there is that option. Josh Hokit versus Curtis Blaydes was an absolute mess, but I am also here for it. Hokit had him hurt very, very early, was going for the kill, and then sort of ran out of gas, but also Blaydes just started working in some takedowns and getting some work done. Had him pinned up against the cage at one point, and just started letting off shots, and probably would have got the finish if it wasn't for the fact that Curtis Blaydes is just, by heavyweight standards, not a hard puncher. Then we get into the second round, and it's Hokit versus Blaydes again, and Hokit is still gassed, but still throwing, still flipping the bird, still being Josh Hokit, being super awkward, but like, dude is an NFL caliber athlete, and this is the UFC heavyweight division. That means a lot, and he's hurting Blaydes repetitively, despite and when Blaydes would like light him up with like a 4 or 5 piece combo, he would just like not have a problem. And then somehow he lands 85 strikes in the third round, and it's insane. It's nuts. So coming out of this, Hokit's going to apparently fight on the White House card against Derek Lewis. That's either going to be a Derek Lewis one-shot killer, or Derek Lewis getting steamrolled. That is the two options. Admittedly, that's the two options for a lot of Derek Lewis fights. What did I learn about Hokit in this one? There's some mental toughness to him, obviously. There's willingness to fight through the fatigue. There is some level of durability. Again, Blaydes is a notably not hard hitter for the division, but still, he ate shots from a much larger man to the tune of 214 times. 174 of those significant, and did not get knocked out. So the chin is apparently there. The durability is apparently there. The willingness to fight is there. The pro wrestling character is still there, although honestly, by the standards of his like pro wrestling gimmick, the post-fight interview here was fine. It was just egotistical, and really that was about it. Honestly, it was just like I'm gonna come for the mamacitas, and if you want to fight me, you're stupid, and I am going to wear dirty shoes in your house to F your couch. So, all things considered, perfectly fine. The conversation about Hokit, of course, is like, does he need to be this character to get over? And the answer is no. He's a action-packed finishing machine at heavyweight at a time where there are very few of those. He is over regardless. And I want to be clear here, because everyone, when I bring that up, people are like, well, yeah, but the humble guy doesn't really play. I'm not asking for the humble guy, because I'm just asking for the real Josh Hokit, who I'm sure is a dick. There is no problem with being a dick in MMA. Michael Bisping, Chris Lieben, Josh Koscheck, although Koscheck flirted with the caricature a little bit. Matt Hughes, absolute penis. John Jones. These are all fighters that are like immortalized and big stars in the history of MMA, even beyond their like relative skill sets. And they're not nice dudes. They're not humble dudes. They're not role models. You can be a dick. It's just I am not here for the more outrageous aspects of his gimmick. I'm not here for the gimmick in general. I've always said this. I am a pro wrestling fan. The problem is almost every time MMA tries to do pro wrestling, they don't do it right. Chael Sonnen did okay, but like Colby Covington didn't get it. Josh Hokit doesn't get it. And that's why I'm not really here for them doing it. You have to understand it. You have to actually get the kayfabe, the psyche, the heel face dynamic. And they don't really do that. He could be just a right-wing crazy boy, and he'll fit right in. He'll be basically the new Sean Strickland, where it's like, do I care that Sean Strickland is an absolute borderline neo-Nazi, by his own words, by the way? No, I just really need people to, and ironically, Sean Strickland would say this, not idolize him. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with Josh Hokit. Same thing. Could be the exact same person. Fantastic fight for him, and we'll see what he does on the White House card. Reyes versus Johnny Walker was a bad fight. I scored round 1 for Walker. I scored round 2 and 3 for Reyes. Round 2 is a bit of a toss-up round that you could give to Walker if you wanted to. So the split decision is fine. There's only really one judge's scorecard that I'm going to take to task on this particular card. And it's not this one. This was a bad fight. I don't really want to see either of these guys fight again. That's legitimately kind of the problem right now, because when it comes down to it, they're both just afraid. And for good reason. They're fighting in a division full of guys who can knock them out, and they both have questionable chins. And honestly, Walker has questionable durability, like, to his body as well. But they're at good gyms and whatever, but I just think they're broken. The reclamation projects on Reyes and Walker, I just don't think will go anywhere. But we'll see them. I'm just not going to get hyped up for it. I was hoping one of them would kind of like accidentally fall into a knockout here, and it did not happen. Cub Swanson stormed Nate Landwehr's house, which has led to fixed fight allegations. I don't think it is, for two reasons. One, I think if you're going to fix a fight, you'd find a way to do it that doesn't involve you getting knocked down like 3 times and probably getting concussed. You'd probably just go down on the first good shot. Or you tap out, you'd shoot into a guillotine or something. It's not like Cub can't grapple. And 2, this is unfortunately, I think, what was always going to happen to Landwehr at some point. The way he fought, there was going to be a very, very rapid drop-off at some point, where the durability was just gone. Because his defensive idea is very Darren Elkins-esque, where it's, I'm going to take damage, you're going to overextend yourself, exhaust yourself, and then I'm going to come roaring back in Rocky Balboa fashion to take the win. The David Onama fight is like the classic example of that right there. But there's a reason he's losing to Morgan Charrier, to Du Ho Choi, to Dan Ige, to Julian Erosa. He's not, that's the other thing, not actually necessarily that durable. And again, I'm surprised Cub put him away this fast. But I don't know. It just doesn't smell as fishy to me, knowing the fighter. We got the big Cub Swanson tribute. Perfectly fine with that. We had my viral tweet of the night when there was a shot of Donald Trump either looking down Cub's wife's top or at his kids. And I'm really hoping it's the former, because the latter is so much worse. And that's just all I have to say on that one. Aaron Pico versus Patricio Pitbull. This was a slightly controversial scorecard because not on the winner. I think everyone had Pico winning. But myself and some others, including Judge Alessio Rodriguez, scored the first round for Pitbull. I don't get the controversy. There was a 5-strike difference. I thought Pitbull landed the cleaner shots. I thought he had Pico looking a little bit rough at times. Again, if you scored over Pico, I have no problem. I just think that the first round is your classic example of this is a push round. This could go one way or the other, depending on how you saw just a couple of moments of the fight, a couple of shots, what you thought was the hardest, what you thought was the cleanest, what you thought was the most impactful, what you thought was the most damaging strike of the round. And if you watch this, if you get 10 people together, you're going to get about 5-on-5. That's what I thought. But anyways, apparently, the social media for MMA was absolutely calling for the blood of Alessio Rodriguez. We'll get to Alessio Rodriguez later. He's not spared from my wrath. But I thought this was a fine scorecard because it was my scorecard. But yeah, rounds 2 and 3, Pico really looks good. And it's a tease, sort of like Costa, because it's against somebody who's just kind of out of the usual. Like Mirzakhanov is not your standard 205er, and Pitbull is not your standard 145er. And Pitbull's also quite old for the division and quite worried about his own durability. So does it mean something? Because it looked good. It looked really, really good. But if we're being entirely honest, Pitbull wasn't throwing enough, wasn't active enough, wasn't willing to engage enough to actually, really test the boxing calm and defense of Aaron Pico, which looked good, but it's looked good in the past too. So Pico is a frustrating fighter to me because the talent is obviously there. The raw boxing technical ability, the athletic upside, the wrestling, of course, is there. Probably I still would like to see him emphasize like control with his wrestling more, just because of the fact that the one thing he doesn't have is a great chin. But this was as good as anything was going to be for him, because he didn't just go out there and melt Pitbull because Pitbull was old. He put together a comprehensive, solid 15 minutes of action where he didn't get clipped particularly hard. He didn't get hurt particularly hard. Again, I thought the first round had a couple of clean shots, but largely he was able to stay out of trouble, even if it was against a guy who, despite the UFC's commentary team's demands about, for example, saying that he had a war with Michael Chandler, he did not, is a little bit too low pace to really be indicative of the rest of the division. Hopefully Pitbull gets another fight, because he's 1-2 in the UFC, and I can't imagine. I could easily imagine that they would just want to cut him because of the whole Bellator hatred / they probably also want to like get away from whatever they're paying him, because I imagine it's not cheap. I imagine it's not cheap. But good performance for Pico in the Bellator war on UFC soil. Kevin Holland versus Randy Brown. I don't have a lot to say about this fight. It was fine, but it was the standard Randy Brown cannot deal with low kicks, and Randy Brown cannot deal with someone who can out-clinch him, or even stalemate him in the clinch. And Holland did both. He kicked him in the leg. He out-grappled him when the fight did go to the ground. The boxing was not really a huge impact. I thought that Holland's boxing actually would be a bigger story in this fight. Wasn't really. He just kind of stayed to the outside, kept kicking Rude Boy in the legs, and when Randy Brown would crash in, he would be like stuck in the clinch, getting like open palm striked in the ear. I don't know what it means. Like it tells me literally nothing about Randy Brown that I didn't already know. And with Kevin Holland, it's like, I don't know. Does this mean anything for fights against other people? But then again, I've been having that with Kevin Holland for his entire career. His entire UFC run has been me going, man, there are pieces of this that I like. There are things that are going well. There are things to build off of. And then he doesn't. So he got the W. He got the win. Apparently they're going to play basketball. And I think he bailed out Daniel Rodriguez from jail. So hopefully they get their rematch, because he seems to want that one. Mateusz Gamrot was my big win on the card. I picked up a bunch of money on him because he went out there and he out-wrestled Esteban Ribovic, which I expected him to do. And then he got an arm triangle in the second round, and the referee fucked up by touching Ribovic, but it was either going to end there, or it was going to end at some point, or it was going to go to the judges' scorecards with Gamrot just continuously out-wrestling Ribovic. Ribovic has no outside striking game. He fights an action game in the pocket, and he doesn't wrestle well. And this is a horrendous flaw of his. And honestly, I was very confused about why Gamrot was such a almost like even money pick. Let me pull up my betting slip here and tell you exactly what I got it at. Here we are, Mateusz Gamrot. I got him at minus 192, and that was just straight up. That was not a prop or anything. And it's kind of nuts. Kind of nuts for a guy who stylistically just does not lose this type of fight. I know he's lost a couple lately, but it's to Dan Hooker and Charles Oliveira, my guys. And Hooker has some of Ribovic's style, but he's a way better counter wrestler. And Charles Oliveira is Charles Oliveira. Let's not even get into that. Gamrot is still going to beat anybody who's not really, really ready to chain wrestle. Tatiana Suarez beat Lupi Godinez. Had a scare in the first round where she got knocked down by Godinez and suplexed. They didn't credit her with a knockdown, but I'd say it was. I had Lupi winning the first round, but by the end of the first round, we were seeing where this was going. Suarez was on top of her, and she could not do anything about it. She was on bottom, not eating anything hellacious or anything, but getting hit 50 times from top position by Suarez is still not fun. And then in round 2, Suarez gets her down, and then gets the ridiculous choke. So not much to say. Suarez will still probably continue to beat pretty much everybody in the division and look very, very silly against Weili Zhang, because if you can stop her wrestling, she's a deeply uncomfortable striker. It's just that the number of ladies I think can stop her wrestling is literally just Weili Zhang. Dern has some interest, I suppose, because of Dern's grappling, but I would pick Suarez to beat Dern. It's just there is an untenable person in this division for her. And that's all there is to it. Chris Padilla versus Markel Medeiros. I want to get the judges' scorecard for this one, because I want to know who I'm crapping on, because I thought it was Alessio Rodriguez and then someone else said it was not. So I need to know. Anyways, what I'm saying is I thought Padilla won all 3 of these rounds. Now, they're close enough rounds that I'm not going to get particularly angry about the idea that you would give a round to Medeiros. There are close rounds here. You could give him the 3rd round. I have no problem with that. That's the round he got the point taken away for the poke in the eye. But round 1, despite the cut, the damage was Padilla's. The cleaner shots were Padilla's. The pace was Padilla's. Round 2, the pace was Padilla's. Medeiros landed some good shots, but it was there. And I had Padilla up 2 rounds to none. Full stop. 3rd round, I gave it slightly to Padilla, but like I said, you could go 9-9 there, and I'd be fine with that. So I'd be fine with a 29-27, which was Solomar Miranda scorecard, I think. But the draw cards, I don't really get. Now, I've always said this. There's an element of like internal logic. If you just thought that Medeiros was landing harder shots, cleaner shots, more damaging shots, you could theoretically give him any of these rounds. But the judge I'm going to point out here and crap on is Derek Cleary. Derek scored rounds 1 and round 2 for Markel Medeiros, and then gave the 3rd round to Padilla. He gave Padilla's worst round to Padilla. The round where Padilla had the least delta in strikes landed, the least success in terms of defense, the least everything. Because I think, honestly, the short notice was getting to him, the missed weight was getting to him, and he was getting tired. I think that's what it comes down to. Medeiros' best round, the 3rd round, outside of the eye poke, was the one that Derek Cleary scored for Padilla. You suck, Derek Cleary. Not the first time I've said that. Solomon Miranda also sucks. He gave the 3rd round to Padilla and not the 2nd. Again, I don't understand. There is a this fight did not have a changing momentum to it. The 3 rounds had a very similar flow. And the 3rd round was by far the best Medeiros round. If you're going to give Medeiros a round, it is the 3rd round. It is not the 2nd round. So Miranda, F you, buddy. And then I guess Alessio Rodriguez has the most defensible card. 1st round to Padilla, 2nd round to Medeiros, tie 3rd round. I still don't like it, but that is the best option. So hey, I apologize to Alessio Rodriguez. I was saying that I was going to be coming for your head here, and I'm not. So what does this mean for Padilla and for Medeiros? Because they're both guys who are sort of developing, sort of becoming something better. They're a little bit old to be calling them prospects because they're 29 and 30 years old respectively. But for Medeiros, the problem is basically what I said in the preview. There is all the physical talent for him, and he is well schooled. It's just that his responses are very predictable, and that leads to problems, which Padilla capitalized on. There just wasn't a lot for Padilla to think about when he was pressuring. And for Padilla, it's a good performance. It's probably the most consistent performance he's had, which is saying something. Because the problem with Padilla so far in his UFC run has been that consistency. That there is, there's the great highlight of knocking out Ismail Bonfim, which is a phenomenal moment. But before that, there was a 1st round where, a lot of it was kind of stuck in 1st gear. There's a very controversial split decision win over Jai Herbert in there. Not really. I scored it for Padilla, but but like a problematic performance there. There's some bad moments in the Rongju fight as well. So to see Padilla go out there and fight 3 complete rounds here on short notice was a big deal. And I'm hoping that he's turning a corner, because I am always here for a fighter turning the corner and becoming better. Kelvin Gastelum versus Vicente Luque. Talk about 2 guys who are not going to turn a corner at any point in the near future. Gastelum started out looking well. His hands look sharp. They look quick. They look fast. He was bullying Luque with his pressure. And then he gets hit. He goes down. Luque is like, I don't need much of a, opening for a Darce choke / Anaconda choke. And there's a debate going on online, which it was. I'm going to stay out of that, because I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. I have short, stubby arms, and I don't do Anacondas or Darces at any point. I defend them. But if you ask me to put you in a Darce choke, I don't know if it would work out. My submission game is very, very boring. It's rear naked chokes, Kimura's arm triangles, the occasional guillotine. That's it. Actually, that's not technically true. I have a surprisingly adept triangle setup, because my legs are short, stumpy, but surprisingly flexible. So I can do some things with that. There you go. But as far as the front headlock game, it's just a power guillotine for me. So I'm not gonna get caught up in that whole thing. Luque is staying at 185, which is insane, because we saw him literally next to Gregory Rodriguez, Hobocop, and he looks 2 weight classes smaller. It's insane. It's nuts. Oh, the Padilla-Medeiros fight was originally announced as a win for Padilla. Really not great post-fight. And then got changed as a draw later. And people are not happy. It's not just me. Charles Radke versus Francisco Prado. This was sort of like the Gamrot Ribovic fight, in the sense that it is a guy who actually wrestles pretty well against an Argentinian. And Argentinians seem to not wrestle well at all. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Santiago Ponzinibbio developed a perfectly serviceable wrestling game eventually. But the current wave of Argentinian fighters, they do not really wrestle well. Except for maybe Kevin Villegas. But Radke was able to take him down at will. Was able to control him. Prado did some good things on the ground. Some things to create space. Some things to create opportunities to escape. But also terrible decisions as well that landed him right back in the same problem. He got a point deducted for an eye poke. And that's really about it. And that's it. Clean sweep on all 3 judges' scorecards. 30-26 for Radke. Radke being the villain, being the dickhead that he is at the end. Again, par for the course. Charles Radke is so weird, because there is an odd dichotomy there, because I feel like he's a guy who desperately wants to be an action fighter banger. In his head, he wants that. That's his idea. And he fought like that for a long time. At the expense of the best part of his game, which is what he has now shown off against Daniel Frunze and Francisco Prado, which is actually emphasizing the wrestling. But I also think that a little bit of him dies inside every time he has to do it. So there is an interesting battle of 2 wolves going on inside of him that at any moment could go either way. But he got the win here. I figured he would. Made some money off of it. Prado is young, and that would be the hope for him going forward. But there is too many just bad decisions in his game. And also the fact that he does not feel like he's big enough to pull off the 170 thing. Also, by the way, Charles Radke, and I've said this before, listed at 5'9" everywhere I look. Routinely taller than guys who are 6 feet tall in the cage. So is he the only guy telling the truth about his height in MMA? I know we've had this before. I remember Nate Diaz versus Donald Cerrone. It's yeah, they're the same height. No, they are not. Oh my God, they are not. Anyways, this is one of those things. So that's all. Check out the social medias down below in the link tree. Check out the MMA Fight Simulator Discord. Check out my video gaming stuff. See you next time. I'm not going to give you a day because it really, really kind of just depends on how work is going.